program. So I want to welcome you to the second annual In the Loop, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Spoken Word Contest and Program. In the Loop is one of 6 ministry groups of the Presbytery of Baltimore, and this is part of our Be More Human series that we started back in September, and we hope that you will join us again in the coming months. But today we're going to be celebrating Martin Luther King, and I would like to turn things over to my fellow ITL member. I'm sorry, I've lost my PowerPoint. One moment. Don't you hate it when that happens? Thank you. Ms. Sharice Jordan Moore. Sharice.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm charged with giving the occasion today, why we're here and why we need to be here. And what I'd like to do is share with you the words of President Barack Obama, who posted today. If anyone had a right to question whether our democracy was worth redeeming, it was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Because in the face of booby clubs and lynchings, poll taxes, and literacy tests, he never gave in to violence, never waved a traitorous flag, never gave up on the country he called home, despite all the injustices and indignities it brought upon him. Instead, he set out to realize his dream the most effective and the most radical way he knew how, by working with others to march, boycott, and sit in, recognizing that, as he said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. The seeds of his courage, his discipline, his vision, and the resilience of all who joined with him took years to bear fruit. But they gave us the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and an American tradition of nonviolent resistance that has rung through the generations, as we saw this summer when Americans of all races echoed his example in standing up to declare that Black lives matter, no more, but also no less. We're in the middle of a tough chapter for our country, but Martin Luther King Day should serve as a reminder that we have been through tough times before and emerged from them stronger, but only because we never stopped believing in our democracy, only because we never stopped working to perfect it, only because even in the face of intimidation, discrimination, and unimaginable suffering, we never stopped dreaming of a better day and never stopped doing the long, hard, essential work of ushering it in. So those are the words of President Barack Obama on this day when we celebrate the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'd like to add to that one of the ways that we celebrate is that this is often looked on as a day for service. Certainly what we're doing today, working with the young people and honoring Dr. King's memory, is one way of service. But for those of you who have not planned anything specific for today besides participating in this event, I'd like to exhort all of us to how we can provide service in Dr. King's name, continuing his legacy throughout the rest of the week, on through February for African American History month, and throughout the rest of the year.
Thank you, Sharice. That's great. So we're going to proceed. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from two speakers who have firsthand experience in the civil rights movement and the various marches that have occurred over the decades to help promote social justice. The Reverend Dr. Patina Scott is here with us. She is a lifelong member of the Concord Baptist Church and serves there as an associate pastor and also as a minister of visitation and pastoral care. And she is, in addition to that, my soror and Zeta Phi Beta. And also George White. Mr. White is a community activist, and he is currently serving as a member of the Baltimore County Democratic National Committee, District 44B. Mr. White is a ruling elder at Lochner Presbyterian Church, where he also serves as the treasurer. And we will also be hearing from our kids. So this is the Martin Luther King spoken word contest, and we will be celebrating and be enlightened by their words of wisdom. Next, what we're going to have is a rendition of the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. I challenge you, while you watch this short video, to write down the names of persons that you're seeing that are important in the civil rights movement, just to see how many you recognize. Enjoy this.
Bring it down, harmony,
I thank our speakers for the suggestion of this video. I think it was just perfect for our occasion. And at this time, we are going to announce and listen to our first and second place winners for our elementary school entries.
I believe that the world really needs to change its ways. I feel like some people in this world need to change the way that they treat people who are different than they are. I have several friends that come from different cultural backgrounds, and we get along well most of the times. If we get along despite our differences, I do not understand why the adults cannot get along. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would not approve of the state of the world at the moment. Dr. King's dream was for everybody to get along despite their differences. It seems that the world, well, some parts, is far from the peace that Dr. King desired, even though there's an entire day made for him in his honor. I was sad to see the rioters break into the Capitol the way they did. The violence was just so wrong. I didn't like how these protesters were treated versus how the Black Lives Matter protesters were treated most of the time. Most of them were marching peacefully. Many of DC's rioters were not wearing masks and could have spread COVID to each other and others. I think it's very selfish and rude for people not to wear masks because my family members were infected by coronavirus and some of my loved ones died. Coronavirus is difficult for me because I do not get to see my friends every day, but I used to. I believe everyone can make the virus go away more quickly if everybody will just wear their mask and stay away from large gatherings. I feel that the world needs to pray a little harder so God will turn things around. I miss going to church physically because I miss seeing my friends in Sunday school and hugging my relatives and other members of the congregation. Hopefully, with God's help, the world will make a huge change in the right direction. This is my prayer.
And next, our first place winner for elementary.
I am in the fifth grade. The path of light is greater than you can ever imagine. 2020 has been a tough year for everyone, but I believe the love we bring into the world can be stronger. Our actions can be a part of something greater in the future with God. The everlasting life with Him and the love can make the world a better place. The violence in our city can be sad and confusing, but we can all have high hopes for a better day with the presence of our mighty God. The pain from doctors and nurses can be depressing to help save lives, but we can still find hope in 2021. More and more people are dying, and it's sad for all of us. We can get through this together.
Next, we will be hearing from our speakers as they share their moments from involvement in the March on Washington and other civil rights moments. Dr. Scott, Mr. White.
Okay. Dr. Scott, you can go first. Where you at?
Okay. I guess as a young person, my first kind of activist involvement in the civil rights movement really came when I was about in 7th grade, because I happened to have been scheduled for a math class with a teacher whose name was Enola Macmillan. And anybody who's my age or older knows that name. She was very active in the local chapter of the NAACP. And when you were scheduled for her class for math, she introduced you to the youth section of the NAACP. And she asked everyone to join the NAACP. I think the youth membership at the time, and I'm really dating myself, was 50 cents or $1, something like that. And so if you brought your 50 cents in, you got a youth membership card. And at the end of the semester, she gave all of the members who had joined a party, and we had ice cream and cake after school one day at the end of the semester. That was my first introduction to the civil rights activism. From there, I went on to join the Civic Interest Group, which was a group that was put together by members of the NAACP, Juanita Jackson Mitchell and her mother, Lily Jackson. And we met on Pennsylvania Avenue after school and sometimes on Saturday. So I really had a background in civil rights and activism and sit-ins. And so when the college students began picketing Reed's Drugstore downtown and some other restaurants, I went down to join them. I must have been maybe in high school at Western at the time. And I got involved in sit-ins, but the one thing my mother told me that I could not do was be arrested. So when they read the Non-Trespassing Act, a law to us, when you were seated at the counter, they would read the law to you and tell you that you had to leave because you would not be served. And so I had to get up. Now, I wasn't the only one whose parent told them they could not be arrested, but 2 or 3 of us, we would get up and we would leave. And then the others would wait until they called the police, and then they would be arrested. But so that's my background as a young person being involved. But when they talked about, I just graduated from college in February of 1963, when they were talking about planning the march. A. Philip Randolph, who I think at the time was the president of the Sleeping Car Porters, was trying to organize this March on Washington. And as you are aware, we had at that time, and we still had, a number of active civil rights groups, and each had their own agenda. There was an AACP who wanted to protest for legalization of a number of things that had to do with discrimination. There was CORE, the Congress on Racial Equality, which was interested more in employment, as was the Urban League. And so all of these organizations, Randolph was trying to get together for this March on Washington. And he was successful in getting it organized along with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference led by Dr. Martin Luther King and the Students Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. At the time, I believe it was Stokely Carmichael, but the person who spoke at the march was, who just died. How could I forget his name? Anyway, but he's the one who spoke for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But when we when the march was being planned, there was a lot of negative in the press about how it wouldn't work. And they were asking for 250,000 Black people together in Washington. They said that was not possible. There probably weren't even that many Negroes who were even interested in the issue. And the churches then got involved, and churches began to organize themselves and rent buses so that people could go to the March on Washington, especially those in Baltimore and in close by, all the way from New York, Connecticut, Boston, to southern states like North Carolina, Georgia, wherever you could come from within a day's ride. Churches organized, and people could get on the buses for free and go to the March on Washington. I happened to ride on a bus from Zion Baptist Church. So my girlfriend, who lived a block from Zion, said, "Oh, I found us a way to get to DC. Do you want to go?" I said, "Yes." So I spent the night with her on Landvale Street and walked up to the church with a picnic blanket, a lunch in a bag, and we got on the bus and went to Washington. And it was just being there, you knew that this was a moment in history and that you were a part of it. As the buses rolled in from everywhere, you came to a certain spot, the bus let you off. He gave you your number of the bus, the name of the company, and told you that what time he would be back to pick us up, but it would be after the program at the Lincoln Memorial. And so we got off the bus, and there was all kinds of activities going on. The one that I remember most was Peter, Paul, and Mary were just out there on the grass singing their song, "If I Had a Hammer." And then Charlton Heston spoke, which I was really surprised about, him becoming so conservative and involved with the Rifle Association, because he was really a supporter of the March on Washington. We saw Harry Belafonte, he got up and spoke. This was the temporary stage near the Washington Monument before the march to the Lincoln Memorial. And we had a full program that morning. We ate lunch sitting on the grass on our little picnic blanket. And when the march started, I guess around 12, and it was so organized. People just, as Martin Luther King and the leaders of the march were on the front row, people just fell in behind them in very organized fashion and marched with them to the Lincoln Memorial. And the newspapers reported that it was the largest protest march or rally that had ever been held in Washington, D.C. At any time. So the March on Washington really began these large, peaceful, I want to add, peaceful protests. There was not, I don't think there was an arrest that day. There was no one doing anything they had no business doing. Everybody was there to really protest that we wanted equality for what they were calling Negroes at the time, who later became, I guess, African Americans or Blacks, whatever you want to call us. But we were all there, but they were not only African American people there. There was a large number of non-Black and white people who attended the march. A lot of ministers from churches nationally, a number of priests, both Episcopal and Roman Catholic, who attended the march. And when we arrived at the Lincoln Memorial, what you see today in DC, all these fences to control crowds, none of that was there. So people just sat where they wanted to, some on the grounds of the Lincoln Memorial, others on the grass that led out from the Lincoln Memorial. And everybody there, you met people from all over who were either sitting around you or near you, or who just started conversations with you. And all of us knew without a doubt that that was a historic moment, and we were a part of it. There were only 5 speakers. I think Marian Anderson, led off with whatever opening there was. And I think it was a Catholic priest who did the invocation. There were a few women sitting on the podium. I think Dorothy Height was one. Marian Anderson, of course, was one. And I think Mahalia Jackson, because I think at some point during the program, she sang. But there were no women speakers. Mm. There were 5 speakers. I think Randolph spoke because he was the organizer. And I think the men from the other groups like CORE, the Urban League, the NAACP, Roy Wilkins, I think at the time, and a few others, and John Lewis, that's the name I couldn't come up with. John Lewis spoke for SNCC. He was probably the calmest of the students in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, because Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown were really the leaders of that movement at the time, but they did not want that kind of radicalism. And so John Lewis spoke on behalf of students. And of course, the final speaker was Dr. Martin Luther King, who did his I Have a Dream speech. And it was outstanding. And we had taken a nap in between some of the speakers, or probably during some of the speakers, but everybody was awake when Dr. King spoke. And everybody was on their feet at the end of his speech. And it's a feeling. And I need to read up some more on this to get more, I guess, perspective on it. But that's what I remember from that day. And people carried signs, March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And as we think about what we are protesting about today, a lot has changed, but we have a long way really to continue to go if we are going to have really equal rights, voting rights, education, equality, in a number of areas such as housing and employment. But I think in the experiences in my life, that was one of the highlights, the 1963 March on Washington. And I've been to every commemorative march that they've had since then, including the one a few years ago. I guess it may have been the 50th anniversary. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Before we hear from Mr. White, I think we will take a listen to our middle school winners coming up. So we had second place high, and I have to say the competition in middle school was very fierce. Our 2 second place winners and our first place winners were just within a point or 2 apart. So our second place winner.
And today I will be sharing my thoughts of the Black Lives Matter movement through a poem that I wrote. Here goes. I am black, from the color of my skin to the texture of my hair, to the length of my strands, to the breath of my smile, I am black. It cannot be denied, it will not be contained, and only I will define it. For when I look in a mirror, my very soul cries out, my black is beautiful. I am the ink it takes to make notation on thin sheets of paper near the mark of a staff. I am the one who feels deeply and loves fiercely. My tears flow just as abundantly as my laughter. I am both soft and powerful, practical and spiritual. In my essence, I am a gift to the world because my black life matters.
Today I'll be talking about this whole year, 2020, starting with COVID-19. We all thought the year 2020 would have come in excitement for all, as it's the first year of the new decade. Everyone has enjoyed December 31st with the high spirit, but none of us were aware that with a new decade, there will be a start of new problems. But as we all get the unacceptable news of the spread of the coronavirus, at the end of January, we didn't even imagine that a single virus can change our lives completely. The lockdown has provided us to spend more quality time with our families. 2020 is really a disgrace for Baltimore, Maryland. It stopped us from seeing our families far away, friends, going to different places around the world, fast food restaurants, etc. The lockdown has changed everyone's life. We can't even reinstall the year 2020. The cases of COVID-19 is increasing day by day, which I hope will come to an end. The students and kids are now experiencing online classes for the first time in life, which is really hard for them. The experience for me doing online classes is fine. I feel kind of sad that we have to do virtual classes because I get distracted when I am really supposed to be on task. So I won't get bad grades. And sometimes my teachers can't hear me on Zoom, and I have to type in the chat. I hope that this virus goes away soon. I pray every night hoping to say, God, please protect my family and others in this world. May you please help us make this virus go away. Everyone is dying day after day. I want peace in our city. Please protect us and others in our city. I hope that everything goes away, this virus and the violence and hate. May our God bless everyone in different places, states, countries, and even our family. Have a nice day, everybody, and be safe.
And I'm here to share my thoughts, experience, and opinion on COVID-19. First, I want to start off by talking about COVID-19's impact on the world. First of all, COVID stands for coronavirus disease. It spreads more than other viruses such as influenza and measles. It usually spreads from person to person, mostly through respiratory droplets which become airborne when people sneeze or cough. Adding on to that, you may not even know if you have the virus, which is why it's extremely important to wear a mask. Wearing a mask would help keep possible corona droplets from leaving or entering your body and going into somebody else's. It's more likely to spread if you are in close contact to other people, which is why it's important to stay 6 feet apart from others. It can also be on objects, so it's important not to touch things outside of your home, and to keep your fingers out of your eyes, nose, and mouth, and to wash your hands afterwards. And the virus is still being studied, meaning it's still very dangerous, even with the knowledge we have now. The fact that this isn't even half of the bad stuff that comes from the effects of the coronavirus is actually really sad. It doesn't only affect people physically, but it is also ruining people's lives, and you don't have to have corona itself for it to ruin your life. Some people are losing their jobs, maybe even missing an opportunity to get hired for a new one. Some kids who don't have access to schoolwork at home are missing a chance for a better future. Some children can't eat much food anymore because they got their food from school, and now that it's closed, they can't go anymore. The list goes on. Since we are remembering Dr. Martin Luther King, it's important to remember the change in America that he had fought for. Although racism is not as it used to be, it still continues today. Black people have often been neglected when it comes to medical organizations. So let me get straight to the point. A lot of black people have been denied of the attention they need for taking care of and getting rid of corona. It has really helped reveal the racial problems that continue in America today. Moving on to my personal experience during this pandemic, it has been extremely hard. Before we were in quarantine, I was and still am an introvert, so I didn't communicate much, but even then I still liked being able to go outside and go get food or even go to a restaurant with my family. I can't even go see my friends, which is a bummer. I feel so limited to doing certain things, such as maybe just having fun or doing what I could when I went outside. Although being quarantined is boring and limiting, it is also much easier to do schoolwork. Since I don't have to worry about turning schoolwork in because I have things to do after school, I can turn it in mostly whenever I want. I don't have to worry about my grades either because I have extra time to help them improve. And now my grades have improved because I've spent extra time doing it. Now that I'm stuck inside the house, I try to realize that my safety is more important than myself having fun or being able to just go eat whatever I want or just go out and do whatever I want. There has been over 2 million deaths in the world, and I just don't plan on being one of them, so I'm always going to put my safety first.
All right, thank you for our young people. Let's continue with our speakers. Mr. White.
Oh, yes. Okay. First, I'd like to congratulate all of the winners because it's platforms like this that we were exposed to in our early years that gave us the background and the base to do just the things that they do. A lot of times, like I always say, the churches have always been a meeting place when we couldn't meet anywhere else. And just to kind of move things on, Reverend Scott, she kind of said it all, but it was her group and my parents who led the way for on. And back during the 60s, during the March on Washington, I remember just it was a lot of excitement going on around me. I wasn't sure what was happening, but they knew that they kind of explained to us that changes were coming. But it had to be people like Reverend Scott and my parents and the churches that kind of opened up the way for us to go. And those seeds were planted in me early on at around the age of 12. That's when I always tease folks, that's when you did what you was told to do. My parents always said, come on, let's go. And that's what you did. But kind of fast forward, maybe about 30 some years up to the March on Washington, the Million Man March. That's when my eyes were sort of open, participating into seeing what was going on a larger scale. And as I shared with the group a few days ago, that was the first time that I was exposed to a lot of men in one place, basically 1 million men in one place. Because normally you couldn't get men in one place without getting into some type of fight. You just don't step on a black man's shoes. But anyway, that Million Man March brought us all together, and it was such a peaceful rally. And we caught trains over and buses, and some drove, but I caught the train. Me and a few of my friends caught the train over and was exposed to a lot of power. And at that time, we kind of left with the impact of what are you going to do when you get back to your home state? And from that Million Man March back in around 1995 and what was instilled in me early on, that's why I continued on becoming just sort of a community person of doing things for my neighbors. And I think that's where the Martin Luther King Day really has an impact, because it emphasizes doing a service type of a deed. But back then, we always did things for the neighborhood. You know, you would go to the store for Miss Mabel. Back then, you guys may have heard where we used to wash steps in the city. We had marble white steps that we would wash and make money. Mm-hmm. But those were the things that we did to keep our neighborhoods looking the way that they looked. And then through the church and through community groups and through the rec centers and the YMCAs and the YWCA. So my sister, we always had a place to go, and we always had leaders in place like Reverend Scott, who really could pull you up and say, look, young man, you need to go home and read a book. You need to go home and do your homework, okay? We always like to do things at the rec center, but in order for them to allow us to play, we had to do our homework first, and then we could play. So it kind of instilled a lot of things in you that kind of moved me into where I'm at today. But from that Million Man March, coming back and began to be a community type of volunteer, then you found yourself saying, they ought to do something. And we all have said that at some point. When are they going to do this? And when are they going to do that? And then one day, an old timer will pull me up and say, look, remember, you are they. So I say, well, what am I going to do? Well, what's on your heart? And then that's when you begin to just do things based on your heart. You had to go around and ask people, what do you think if we planted some trees, if we planted some grass, and they would just say, just organize it and do it. So we always have a group that got together and we organized the little block cleanup. We organized cutting grass, planting trees, and that way we worked on the neighborhood locally. And then as I got older, you had folks that would come up to you and say, you ought to run for something. I said, well, what am I going to run for? They say, well, run for something dealing in community work. So when they had the elections that come up, you say, well, they got to run for something. But then I always kept thinking, remember, you are they. So you begin to run for different positions. And at one point, the Baltimore County Democratic Central Committee, an opening came up and I ran. And at the time, I lost. So my heart was hurt, but I didn't give up. I still continued being a community person that I was destined to be. I never really worried about a title. And I stayed part of the group just as a guest visitor. So I would go to the meetings month after month as a guest. And then at one point, there was an opening as an associate member. I mean, I had voice, but I didn't have a vote. But I still applied as an associate member, and I got elected as associate member. I still kept doing my activism in the neighborhood, finding out what the community wanted and needed, showing them how to do it, connecting people with different government. Then later on, maybe about a year later, a position opened up as a member at large. A member at large is sort of the same thing. You had voice, but you didn't have vote. But it was a few things you could vote on being a member at large. So I applied for that and I was blessed to get that as well. Again, I kept going. I kept showing up, doing what I do, and that's doing community work. And then as the way that positions work, as one person retires or one person moves up throughout the system, then that opens up other doors. So there was a position that one of the delegates had as a Central Committee voting member. She got promoted as a state of Maryland delegate. So that opened up her seat for the Central Committee as a voting member. And again, I applied for it. And believe it or not, didn't anybody run against me because they said, they can't be George, you've been around too long. So I wound up being blessed and got voted in as a full voting member of the Baltimore County Democratic Central Committee. So now that's the position I hold in District 44. I still continue to do volunteerism because once you learn to serve, you feel good about serving, you find your purpose, and our purpose is to serve. And this day we're having here, this Martin Luther King Day, the youth that are online, that's watching us, they see that it's all about service. And a few years ago, my wife and I, we started a ministry at the church we called Connect the Dots. And we just began to connect people with stuff. If they needed help doing resumes, they needed help with their homework. They needed help finding a job. We would just kind of coordinate them and help them. And then at some point, my daughter, she used to manage 5 Panera Breads. So one day I asked her, I said, what do you guys do with your day-old bread? She said, well, Pops, we give that away. She said, but you can apply to Panera Bread and become one of our distribution points where they would give your day-old bread to. So I applied online, and their program is called the End of Day. They spell it E-N-D, and they spell the word donation like dough. But you apply, and then you wait, and then they will assign you a store locally. So I waited a few months, and then they assigned me a store in Owings Mills, the Panera Bread there. So for the last 5 years or so, my wife and I, we pick up bread from Panera Bread 5 days a week. They give us about $300 to $400 worth of bread and desserts every day. And we deliver them to homeless shelters, food pantries in Baltimore County, Baltimore City. And this is our mission. This is what we are called to do. But I just wanted to share with the young folks, your job is to share. Your mission is to share. But you get your base from what you're doing right now. One of the main things you want to continue to do is continue to get your education, continue to find mentors, stay connected with your local church. And I find that the Presbyterian Church, I've been part of the Presbyterian family now for, I guess, over 12, 15 years now. And I enjoy it. Their missions are worldwide. But the main thing of it is we found that the church is in you. And what's being planted in you young folks as we speak is the seeds of success. So you just keep doing what you're doing. You can't always win, but you will win in God's eye. Mm-hmm. So it's always a winner there. But every now and then you get a chance to walk with the trophy. But we all get a trophy at the end. I just want to share that with you. And remember, one of my favorite quotes is, you are there, and draw your line in the sand and continue your strong beliefs. And again, I thank you for allowing me to be part of this forum. And if you can see, my wife keeps coming in and out. She's right on the side of me, but the way the screen is set up, she's kind of waiting. They called us a tag team at church, but because we're always together. But both of us are retired. We're retired educators. So we enjoy doing what we do. But again, I love the church. I love doing God's work. And remember, the church is in you. And just continue good work. And again, congratulations to all the winners. And I thank you again for all of the leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you so much. Just a reminder, there was a Million Man March, and there was also, if I can make slideshow, there was a million other marches as well. And I believe, Bettina, you attended one in Philadelphia, is that right? Dr. Scott? Okay, maybe. I'm sorry, Dr. Scott, can you unmute?
Yes, the one in Philadelphia, I guess was about 25 years ago, at least.
So there are marches. COVID makes it a little bit tough for us to participate these days, but it's an opportunity worth participating in and getting our young people to if we can. But all of these gatherings make our voices heard, and we thank you for sharing your experiences on these. And last week, you're going to be hearing our high school winner, and that is in singular because as Mr. White ran unopposed for his Democratic National Committee seat, our young person was the only high school entry. But we want to celebrate his participation and winning.
this time in history, many things happened. 2020 was a very tragic year. It left a mark on the world that many people will not forget. COVID-19 started to spread, the virus killing 2 million people worldwide. Amusement parks, schools, stores started to close, and restaurants too. Americans were losing their jobs. It came to the point where the government started giving out food to those in need. And during all of this, we had a president who did not lead the country of the United States, nor help stop the virus. He did nothing other than spread false information about the virus and risk more people's lives. We had a leader that was not leading the country as he was supposed to. During 2020, there was a big Black Lives Matter protest, which all started once a video was leaked of a black man being killed by a white cop. His name was George Floyd. His death put a spark on the world and reached almost 26 million people and made 26 million people protest for Black Lives Matter and spread awareness of the issue. Even though his death was tragic and sad for the black community, it brought people together, whether black or white, standing for one inequality. His death brought awareness of the Black Lives Matter issue and reached millions of people. As humans, we have to appreciate the bad because without the bad, there wouldn't be good. It's the bad that brought everyone together to protest. It's the bad that makes us who we are, and we must not forget that. Even though 2020 was a terrible year, we can't ignore the good things that happened during that time. Many people had more time to themselves and spent time with their families. 66.7% of Americans turned out to vote in a national election, which is a record-breaking percentage.
I'm sorry. I want to congratulate James for his participation. These young people brought out a lot of important, good points. What they were asked to do, and I neglected to say this at the beginning, our contest theme was, this time in history, what is your story? We invited them to talk about what will they tell their kids in 20 or 30 years about what they're experiencing right now. And as Dr. Scott and Mr. White shared with us, those experiences of theirs in their youth that planted in them the will, the interest, the understanding the importance of being the they. And we wanted our young people to speak to that. A lot of this was about COVID. Some of it was about Black Lives Matter. And just as we close, I want to point out this flyer from the 1963 march demanding an end to police brutality, and this recent New York magazine cover, where this continues to be an issue that we are trying to address. And as James pointed out in his speech, George Floyd's death was a spark that we hope won't die. So we thank you for participating with us today, and we're going to allow you to open your mics if there are comments you would like to make. I'm very curious who had the highest number of names from the video. We did have some folks chat. Let's see what it said in the chat. I may have more than allowed since I've watched this video so many times in preparation today. So I'm gonna put my number down there. Why don't you open your mics and share with us what your account is like, or any other comments that you might like to make. There are some in the chat that perhaps I will read. Someone did mention, I'm sorry that the audio on some of the young people's recordings were a little bit low. I unfortunately didn't have the facility to try to make that a little bit better for you. But let's see what some of our chat messages are. And if you'd like to raise your hand, I think Frank from the Presbytery would call upon you to make any comments that you'd like to make. Don't be shy. We do have a comment that opening with song was excellent, and to please place that video on Facebook. We have a little bit of adjustments to make in this presentation, but it has been recorded and it will be posted on the Presbytery's website. So you'll be able to access the entire recording of today's session. One family identified 21 people. It was moving kind of fast, so it was hard to write down the names quickly enough. I'm going to read off some of the ones that I'm aware of, and if you have others that you got that I did not get, please feel free. Oprah Winfrey, Ralph Bunche, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Paul Robeson, Marian Anderson, Zora Neale Hurston, Cab Calloway, Thurgood Marshall, Emmett Till, Andrew Young, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, T.D. Jakes, Bishop Tutu, Desmond Tutu, Mr. Mandela, Johnetta Cole, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, John Lewis, Barbara Jordan, Shirley Chisholm, Colin Powell, Kanye West, made it in there.
I didn't even see him.
Rosa Parks. Who else did you see?
I got Jesse Owens, Tommy Smith, John Carlos. I thought Douglas Wilder from Virginia was there too.
Governor.
Angela Davis.
Rosa Parks.
Oops. Yeah, Rosa Parks.
Yep.
Dan gets all the sports figures.
And all the ones I didn't get.
Oh, Muhammad Ali was in there too.
Tammy has something to say.
Yes, please, Tammy.
I just wanted to say, I just thank all the participants and everyone who went in to making this, putting together this form for the kids. I think it was very, very awesome. And I only had about 14, so it was really, really awesome. And I just want to thank all the participants and everyone who, took their time to make this happen.
Thank you for being here.
I'm raising my hand because I don't know how to do it on the screen.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. But I do want to say that we celebrate this holiday today, but it didn't just happen. It happened because Stevie Wonder, one person, started a campaign to have a holiday celebration in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King and all that he had done. And from that one person, it expanded. It was over the course of years before it happened. And actually, it was President Reagan who actually, I believe, signed the bill, which would come up every year in Congress from the original campaign. And out of that came the song, of course, which was a campaign song, the new Happy Birthday version that everybody sings now, in the older version. And Reagan immediately set up a committee across all of the agencies that would work on setting aside the third Monday of January as Dr. Martin Luther King Day. And I happen to have been able to serve on that committee, which was chaired by Mrs. Coretta Scott King. And we met once a month, every month, until until the establishment of the day. And it was a national holiday, but every state did not necessarily have to make it the holiday. And so it's over the course of all of these years that states have voted for it to become a holiday in which banks are closed and some other things happen.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great. That's important. You know, a lot of folks don't take time to recognize the day. And as Cherise admonished us in the beginning, that if we didn't get to do service today beyond listening, it's not too late. There's Black History Month, there's every day of the year to be not the day, to be the day rather, as George has given us.
I have a comment from go ahead.
Hi, my name is Burdetta White, but many people on the IC call me Bert. I just want to tell the students, I'm a retired educator, all grades, all the way through graduate school, that they did an excellent job. And I don't know if they received any type of award or something, but they did each one of them did an excellent job. The one for high school, was he representing Baltimore City College? I saw Baltimore on his shirt with the colors. I didn't know if
he goes to Randallstown.
Randallstown, okay. I was going to ask my granddaughter, who's a junior at City, if she knew him. But each one of them did an excellent job.
Just as background, we didn't explain, but the contest has 9 winners, 3 at each grade level. We only had 9 contestants this year. So those that did not get first, second, or third prize place in their grade level will get an honorarium for participating. And I invite all of you to get young people in your sphere of influence to participate in this next year. Right now we do it for 4th through 12th graders. As was said, we just find it to be an opportunity for kids to explore with their families, hopefully, and within their own minds, what this day means and what their role in life will be in terms of becoming a next leader. So yes, I applaud all of their participation and thank you. And they get the first, second, third prizes for each level is $100, $50, and $25.
Yes, all right. They deserve it. Yeah. Yeah, they deserve it.
I think Deborah's hand is waving.
Debbie.
All right,
Debbie.
So we're gonna get ready to close. Oh, there's some more words. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about James, that the high school student. He actually is an immigrant from Cameroon who has not been here.
I don't know, maybe 4 years.
Maybe 4 years, and learned English very quickly. I think that adds to the how well he does with space.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, his first language was French.
Wow. Awesome.
Grace?
Awesome.
I just wanted to say that I think it's really important that we stress the day of service and service throughout the year. The Biden inaugural committee has identified this as a day of service, and I did type into the chat the link to their site that gives toolkits for service, as well as an opportunity for you to pledge to do service a number of amount of time, and also to get your events listed on that website. So you might want to follow that link, and it is in the chat.
Yeah. And anyone that needs our help in doing that, prior to coming to this forum this evening at 1:30, we had put on one from 12 to 1 from the Baltimore Democratic Central Committee. And I was the co-chair of that event. And we connected with, as it was mentioned, with Clarice, with the Biden's campaign. And I actually listed our event on their site. And it worked out pretty good. But anyway, it's if you guys need help doing it, just connect back with me and I'll help you along the way. But that way your event could be spread around the country. People will see it from connecting with his website. Okay, that's it.
Are there any more hands, Frank? Okay, again, just thank all of you for being here today. Please follow, well, I'm saying follow, but not as in social media, because I don't know how to do that. But we do advertise all of our Be More Human series events on the website of the Presbytery of Baltimore. And since you have attended today, you'll get emails from us in the future. But next month, February the 16th, we're going to have a session talking about the cultural contribution as a legacy of slavery in America. And in March, Sharice Jordan Moore is leading an event that will explore the stereotypes of Black women as part of our March Women's History Month offering, which I think will be probably March 16th. We have been trying to stick to the 1619 timeframes because our series was originally built on the 1619 project of the New York Times, where in August of 2019, they published a series of articles acknowledging or recognizing the 400 years of since the first transatlantic slave ship came into Jamestown, Virginia. So be looking for our events that occur on the 16th and 19th of the month. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. We loved your being here and doing this. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you.